Welcome back to Elementary Statistics. This is a very quick follow-up video to part 21 in which we had the unlikely event where I believe we got 10 tails and 0 heads. And that is an unlikely event in this case because, and we're going to apply some of what we've already learned in statistics, which is multiple independent events. So actually this does fit perfectly with the way the series has gone so far in the sense that that was perfectly timed. Since we had 10 events that were all independent of each other and the probability of flipping a heads or a tails is 50%, in this case, in order to calculate the probability that we would get 10 tails, it would be, 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2 times 1/2, basically 1/2 to the 10th power, which in this case is 1 out of 1,024. Okay, so it's not impossible, but it's unlikely. Another point that I wanted to make really fast that I did not make in the other video, and I when I watched it again, I was like, one thing that was a little unclear. So when I was talking about things that were unlikely or likely, or what we would expect or we wouldn't expect with this bell curve, what I mean is, like, if we had a batch of 10 flips, okay, we would expect that the majority of the time when we flip those coins, we're probably going to get something close to like 5 and 5, or 6 and 4, maybe 7 and 3, 8 and 2, probably less likely, but not impossible. 9 and 1, again, probably less likely, not impossible either. And then, of course, 10 and 0, very unlikely, right? That's what we would expect. And so that's what I mean on this bell curve. So if you think about the center, and we'll let me just try to push this over here. So where this these two shaded areas are, think of that as being like the 5 and 5 and the 6 and 4. And then think of these darker shades on the outside. So basically the two outside portions, think of those as being like 7 and 3, and then we're starting to get into the 2 and the 8s. And then the very far tails, that would be like our 9 and 1s or 0 and 10s, with a very far tail being the 0 and 10s. So again, going back to this, it's not impossible that this happens, right? That we would get, let's say, 10 tails in a row. And obviously we saw it, and there's like, yeah, that would be a 1 out of 1,024 chances. But the point is, it's highly unlikely to occur. And just because we get, let's say, 10 tails in a row, going back to the gambler's fallacy, doesn't mean we're going to then get 10 heads in a row, right? It doesn't balance that way. So these are all independent events. So actually it was really well timed. Again, that was not planned. That is something that we don't have control over, but it just so happens that this actually ends up relating to independent events. So yeah, it was really cool to see something that was unlikely. Again, it's not impossible, and I would welcome you all to practice and maybe even track how many times you get, let's say, tails, and you will see if, as you do more and more, it will start to conform to kind of what you would expect in terms of those batches of 10 flips. And that was not clear in the previous video, so that was my bad on that. But yeah, we were talking about in terms of what we would expect in terms of these events. We're talking about the batches overall. We would expect that the batch of 10 flips would conform to that 5 and 5, 6 and 4, maybe 7 and 3, 8 and 2 is going to be kind of rare. And then, of course, 9 and 1 and 0 and 10 are going to be really rare. So I am going to publish this video the same day that I published the other one, because I think this part 22, relates directly to part 21. So there will be 2 videos this day. And that's why, because I don't think that it would be good to separate these videos.